give me the opportunity for a short reaction on this. So I think that you present something like a mainstream of European policy, because there is no explicit urban policy on the European level, and never was. No, never was. There have been always some incentives, some ideas, some pressure groups who have been present and communicated with the Commission, and there is the subsidiarity principle, and that means that only in the last months, during the discussion of the restructuring of the territorial cohesion policy, and in the fifth cohesion report, which was published, I think, 3 weeks ago, the first time in an official communication, the urban issue is mentioned. So, the Danube strategy is not a strategy which is oriented only on urban agglomeration. So it was heavy work. It was really heavy work to convince the Commission to include on the one or the other part, or in one or the other part of the communication paper and also of the action plan, elements of an urban agenda. So, and that's to make this clear that you don't have to worry about that. Nobody is thinking about agriculture. 50% of European money is still going in agriculture, and there is from the Vienna WIFO, it's really a high-ranking institute, research institute in economics here in Austria. They made a study, and the conclusion was this was presented last Monday when Commissioner Hahn was in the Europa House discussing the cohesion policy in the fifth report. They said, okay, our expertise is that this amount of subsidizing agriculture, which goes to Red Bull and Lower Austria, Molkerei and things like that, the big business in agriculture, not to the small units somewhere here in the south, in the east of the country. It's counterproductive. So because it's conservating the structures. This amount of money in agriculture is conservating the structure and with a negative impact on GDP. So this was a very, very interesting message. So you hear I'm not very so I want to say I'm an urban man. In this case, I'm an urban man. And let me add another aspect. And I think this was very interesting. You talked about the borders and so on. The thing is that east of Austria, we have centralized systems, especially if I think on Serbia. In the Serbian paper, the contribution of Serbia to the Danube strategy, Belgrade wasn't mentioned. In the Hungarian paper, Budapest was not mentioned. There was only half of a sentence that it's an interesting touristic destination. And that was the same in Romania, in Bulgaria, and so on. Why? Because the papers, they finalized, so it's my thinking about that. the finalization of the papers has been done on the national level, and the Commission is only communicating with the national level. There are 14 contact points. They are, in Austria, they are on this Ministry of European and International Affairs. We always say BMIR, it's abbreviation, you know. And then this is the contact point, the official contact point. And it's up to the countries. It's national issues in which intensity they include into the total procedure other elements of the political administrative system. And so that's why to understand the situation in the region and to let's say to develop the right strategy and the right projects, we have to understand and to study the governance situation, because this is crucial. You know, if you only do it on the national level, then I'm sure you have other results compared to if you include, let's say, local organizations, cities, and so on. But this is not an issue of the Commission. The Commission cannot say, I write down a strategy with good insight to include your cities and your who. It would be very interesting something to talk about this. We only think about the situation in Austria, discussion between federal government and the land. You know, so it's a similar thing we have in this land. So,
Yes, let's start. The discussion. We start already, right? And then also. Okay, shall we sit just to sit in a circle?
No, we cannot.
Okay, like this. Please.
Yeah, I mean, the story about borders is very interesting, I would say, especially looking from our side, our standpoint. And I must conclude something which, from my experience, understanding borders in Europe is different in different parts of Europe, and especially in Southeast Europe. It's not only a matter of non-European countries, non-EU countries, but also EU countries, Bulgaria and Romania. We heard Mr. Busek, Bulgaria and Romania are both European countries, EU countries, but they have only one bridge. Why? The river is still bordered, not the bridge, as you put in your project a few years ago. The river is there still border. So we are coming to the point of cooperation. We all have cross-border cooperation programs. Now we have some transnational projects like this, but how we behave, how we orient to these programs. We understand them as something given by somebody in Europe, not as our interest. We are realizing it because somebody told us to do it, not because we understood it as a need to cooperate. We still have borders in our head, very, very, very strict. And that's why it does not function. It's not in a legal system of our countries. We don't understand as a part of our way of thinking, but of somebody else thinking of us. Now I will remind you to the project Planet Sense. We prepared it a few years ago, 6 of us, several countries and so on, and we introduced an idea of so-called action areas, which means if you have action plan, and if you have cities, metropolitan areas around, if they don't cooperate to make a kind of action area, action plan could not be realized. So, as Simin Dawoodi said, territory matters, area matters. So we have to understand it as a need to develop part of, not of our country, but of this part of Europe. We had, we put there action area Belgrade, Szeged, Timisoara. When I told it to our government in Belgrade, city of Belgrade, they looked at me, Belgrade, Timisoara, small town, what should we speak? You know who is now activating action area there? Italian partners. Why? Because Italians, they have their investment in Timisoara. They need a road to Adriatic Sea through Belgrade. So now they are activating action area. Not Serbian part, not Romanian side, but Italian side. We don't know what are our real interests, economic interests, to make action.
May I clarify one thing?
Which I just to conclude.
Okay.
Which this means that education and awareness is very, very important. Our governments, our institutions, they still don't understand the meaning of cooperation, meaning of making action plans and realizing action areas. We, in spatial plan of Serbia, we put several action areas. Belgrade with Novi Sad must cooperate. Niš with Prokuplje and Leskovac must cooperate. But still, even within the country, it's still every municipality for itself. They don't feel the meaning of cooperation.
I do only want to clarify one thing because not to discuss in the wrong direction. I spoke about the 4 pillars and the 11 priority areas. These priority areas are thematic areas and not geographical areas. No, they are only thematic. They are, let's say, security, transport, energy, and things like that. So there's no indication of any location. Only to clarify. Okay.
Yeah, it's Rusuma, Vienna University of Geography. I would like to come back to this governance aspect of Danube macro region and concretely the questions concerning those bilateral consultations that the Commission had with the Danube states. First was because it's an EU strategy somehow that's clear, and there is already one thing with you mentioned those different levels of or rows of states, with some are EU members, some are not EU members or candidate countries and so on. If there have happened bilateral consultations with every of the 14 states or just with the EU member states within the Danube area, and then going into detail with the bilateral consultations, I've heard that in the case of Austria, even of course the Commission is primarily talking to the national level in terms of the contact points, but for the Austrian consultation there were also lots of subnational representatives together with the BNIA in Brussels. And did you got to know how this was handled in the other member states, if they also by themselves invited the lower levels, or if in other states only the national level took action?
So the substance of this consultation procedure was that the Commission stated from the beginning, it's not our strategy, it's your strategy. You have to contribute, and the consultation process was also organized in the internet, involving the civil society, NGOs and so on, and they collected papers, they collected contributions, and so what at least at the end of the second meeting in Budapest, my conclusion was, yes, they collect from everywhere, but the only type of papers which count are national papers. So that's what we tried from the city of Vienna. We made a first contribution. We organized the other Länder, Upper Austria, Lower Austria, the Burgenland and did a paper by these four later. And this was before we went to Budapest, and I came back and said, okay, this is not enough. We have to organize all the 9, and then to deliver it to the federal chancellor, which is the organizer, the coordinator, that's it, not the contact point, the coordinator. And if all the 9 are delivering one paper, then they have to act. And they did, we have a good relation and so on. This was the second Austrian contribution. So, and the bilateral negotiations they did it with all the 14. They did it with all the 14. And so I can only say in the Austrian case that there were the representatives of the Länder included in this delegation. And we discussed it with 2.5 hours.
Was the paper changed?
Pardon?
Was the paper
Of
changed?
course.
Of course.
No. I'll tell you on the 9th of December. Sure.
Okay.
One second. So, with the other countries, I do not know. So we only met them in front of the office. So there was not only one man. There were always a grouping, but we couldn't identify from where, national or local.
May I ask you, Mr. Giffinger, you were mentioning the changing of meaning of borders, which is a very sensitive question, and you were talking about the learning function. Now, what idea would you have how this learning could function? I mean, from a bottom-up and from a top-down in the within a state or within a cross-border learning. How could this be realized as a project, for instance?
Yeah. I think there was another term used today. This is regional identity. Yeah. And regional identity. And Mr. Pusek assumed that there is a common regional identity along the Danube River. So I do not agree to this assumption. I guess there are differences. I do not know how strong they are. But on the other side, what we discuss, if you look on discussion in social sciences, it is not a regional identity which is necessary in order to bring it into a cooperation. What is more, or even more relevant is, we call it collective competences. Collective competences means that you may have different regional identity, different interests you bring in according to your regional background. But collective competences mean that you have some common language, you are able to communicate. This has to do with education, with human capital. This has to do with the ability to discuss problems in a certain way, and in order to bring it forward, because we have very often we are not understanding each other. So collective competences means there's some sort of socialization, having evolving same system, value systems, social value systems, economic value systems, and cultural values, or accepting other cultural value systems. So this is a broader concept, let's say. But it's because it's not necessary to have the same regional identity. But they should not. One should be able to talk about that not in a conflicting way, but in a productive way. Productive means in a positive way.
Very shortly to borders. My name is Wilfried Kuhn from Bockingdorf. I strongly believe that borders are firstly defined by culture. For example, language, or religious beliefs. If you look to Yugoslavia, when Yugoslavia fought apart, what was the unifying basis for the different countries, Slovenia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and so forth and so forth. That means borders are defined through a very long development of cultures, including religions. If you look to Styria and Carinthia, for example, at the border, you don't see the border, but there's a border, because if somebody talks to another, he feels he's a Carinthian, I'm a Styrian, okay, and so forth and so on. And this is something which develops very, very, very slowly. The time frame of developing in this area is extremely slow. But then there comes the European Union, and this is, for me, the point. They give 4 pillars. These are 4 very nice sausages. They hang the sausages here and say, look, you are all interested in these sausages. Now go forward and try to compete for these sausages. Why they're doing this? Because they want to bring this area into a unified, or let's say a kind of common areas with common development in the sense of a European Union. And therefore I would strongly distinguish between something which is triggered or impacted by European Union policy and national policy in the sense of border policy. What I learned from Maurice Stoikov is that they first thought, what could we improve in our country? Not primarily aiming if they can get subsidies from Brussels for this. That may be in a longer term, yes, but not in the beginning. And these are things where we maybe should look a little bit into also the time frame of developments and how we can overcome this. And this learning region and capacity building, these are of course possibilities to overcome this. And without, we are talking here in several languages. We are doing that. Sorry.
Okay, good point. Thanks.
This is a special occasion today that we present 2 national political institutional systems to each other to compare them. This is just one event which usually does not happen. And if anyone tries to do a cross-border project, you encounter immediately the need to understand the other country's system. And you start with a difficult situation understanding your own country's system first. And because you take things for granted because you grew up in it. And then you start, what is different in the other country? Who would you be able to address and cooperate with and who not? And then you start, why? Is it the level? Is it the political situation? Is it the financial or resource situation? In all countries here, we are so close together, we have to understand this situation on the other side of the border to be able to cooperate. This is a difficult task. It costs a lot of time and energy to do it, and you have to have a good reason for doing it. And the situation in some of the countries and regions is so difficult that you really have to overcome those high barriers. It's a very high barrier to overcome. And I can only support the sausages that they are there. Because without those sausages, these things would be much more difficult to overcome. You have to have a good reason. And the question here is, are the sausages being used in the proper way to bring down the meat? Are you able to bring it down to the ground and make it back? The sausage. Or is there a danger also that the money is misused or misled? And just to have a good strategy, a good plan, and to be able to communicate to the neighboring country, to the neighboring region, to the European Commission is an essential prerequisite to go on. All we have to learn is to have this exchange in a proper way. Each of the countries have their own difficulties to overcome.
Yes, I do not fear that they will start a national competition because it was quite clear from the beginning that eligible are only transnational projects.
Yeah.
So if you start something for capacity building, so you have at least to do it for 10 of the 14. So that is the thing.